If you're looking for a brutally honest assessment of Ruben Amorim's tactical prowess and whether or not he can actually improve Manchester United, you're in the right place. It's the Pythagoras perspective on Ruben Amorim. So the first thing we're going to do is just quickly look at his formation and start off by looking at his pressing structure. So as we know, Sporting play in a 3-4-2-1. Now, very quickly, you've got the spearhead striker. It's usually supported by two inside forwards who are pretty technical, a mixture of, say, a winger and a number 10 type of player. You've got two wing backs either side, and you've got two midfielders. And midfielders are interesting. It's usually a 6 and an 8. So one of them has to be a box-to-box midfielder, one of them a better sort of holding midfielder, or they can both be box-to-box midfielders. And then you've got a back three and then a goalkeeper who's generally quite comfortable on the ball. So that's their overall formation. Now let's break it down more carefully. Let's start off with their pressing structure. On to their pressing, the main thing to focus on is this concept of the Pentagon press. This is quite unique to Amorim. What he does is he plays with these 5 players in the central region of the pitch. So he's got his front three, he's got the 2 midfielders behind, and these 5 as a unit are looking to hunt for the ball collectively. So let's just say the ball's at the central centre. Gyökeres will be the spearhead, looking to engage with the ball carrier. If that ball goes across, then you've got Pedro trying to press that next ball receiver. Potentially it could be that player, it could be that player. If this ball has somehow managed to get itself out wide, this player, the midfielder, will be expected to almost be part of this front 5 now. So you wouldn't really expect midfielders to go so high from this region of the pitch. Usually midfielders are looking to protect this area of the pitch, but he's got them as part of the press. So this player would go into the press. This other midfielder would tuck in here. And as you can see, it's still a 5-man setup in terms of the way they're looking to press. It's still a Pentagon of some sorts, but that's how they do it. The 5 go together depending on which area of the pitch that the ball's headed towards. Now, if that ball has somehow escaped that press and it was played into here, then this left wing back that was here will be expected to join in with the press and try and force that ball to go backwards. So now it's almost become a 6-man press. Now, what you'll notice is in terms of the back three now, what they do is they tuck across to the side of the pitch that the ball is being played down, and the opposite wing back will come back to form a back 4. Now, if somehow that ball was finding itself into this area of the pitch, then what you'd see is that this wing back would then go to engage with the ball. The back 3 will tuck across, and this player will form the back 4. And obviously, these players would then come across to form the press down this side. So they're a very, very difficult team to play through. This press is very, very effective. And we're just going to watch some footage of it in action. Now, as we can see, here is the Pentagon press. You've got, Gyökeres, Trincao, Pedro as the front three, and they're supported by Marito and Hjulmand. And as you can see, those 2 midfielders are very, very high up the pitch. And basically what the team is saying to them is that, don't worry, we've got you. You guys go press as a unit. Now, as you can see, Hjulmand's gone out to engage with the ball. Now it's still a Pentagon, but he's now part of that front 3, as you can see. And Pedro's now dropped back to almost form that second line with Marito. Now, what Marito's going to do here is basically protect the ball going into this space here, and he can go either side depending on where the ball's going to go. And if we just take that back a little bit, what we can see is that the wing back on that side of the pitch has now joined in with the press. So there's 6 men now involved with the press, 2024 Olympic Games, and it's forcing the ball backwards. Now the ball is going down the other side of the pitch. Again, the Pentagon shape is still there. The same 5 players are engaged with the press. And now the opposition wingback, the opposing wingback on the opposite flank is now joining in with the press. So as you can see, just as I explained on the tactical board, 5 men going for the press and then supported by whichever wingback is on the ball side of the pitch. So as you can see, the Sporting press is very, very effective. But what happens when the teams get through the press? How do Sporting respond to that? What's their rest defense structure look like? So let's dive into their rest defense structure. In terms of Sporting's rest defense structure, it's not rocket science. It just becomes a 5-4-1. So the wing backs will drop back. So instead of a 3-4-2-1, it's now become a back 5. The midfielders, the 2 midfielders, are now supported by the 2 inside forwards. So they drop back to become a 4-man unit. It's like a parallelogram, let's just say. And Gyökeres will usually be spared from defensive duties once that ball's gone past the halfway line. But he is quite hardworking, so he will also engage with the press. Let's just say that ball's got itself there. Then what these two are looking to do is squeeze that ball, try and win it back, and then try and get Gyökeres back into the game as quick as possible. If that ball was to somehow find itself on the opposite side of the pitch, then obviously these two players here will look to get across. Marito more deeper, Pedro on that side, Hjolman looking to come across. So basically, depending on where the ball is on which side of the pitch, the midfield four will look to go across to that side of the pitch, and the back five will remain a back five once the opponents have got into enemy territory. Now, one question worth asking is, what are the defensive demands on these wingbacks? Are they expected to be defensively very competent? If so, are his wingbacks more Reece James, Ben Chilwell type players, slightly more defensive in nature, i.e. fullbacks who are being used as wingbacks, or is he using pure wingers as wingbacks? This is interesting because obviously it will feed into what type of players in the United squad are going to be used out wide. So we're just going to look at some footage. This is Nuno Santos defending. And what we can see is that he's been beaten quite easily. So he's not someone I would put up there in terms of his defensive prowess. We'll just move on to the next piece of footage. Once again, he's come out wide to confront his man. Not really blocked that cross with any degree of urgency. He's let that cross come in quite easily. So these wing backs, they're more just to get back and create that back five structure, but they're not players who are going to be necessarily talented from a defensive point of view. So what I would say is that in terms of predicting what that lineup is going to be, and obviously we'll touch upon it, I wouldn't be surprised if we see wingers there playing as wing backs rather than, a Matsuraoui out there. I don't think that's the right type of profile to expect from Amorim's wing backs. So we've had a look at how Sporting Lisbon defend, but how does Amorim look to produce build-up play? Is it any different to Ten Hag? Is it chaotic? Or is it a bit more like a Guardiola, Arteta, very structured, very measured way of bringing the ball out from the back? Well, let's take a deeper look on the tactical board. Now, one of the key players in Sporting's build-up and someone who's been linked to many clubs across Europe is Inacio, his left centre-back. So the reason why he's been so treasured and scouted heavily is that he's a player who's incredibly comfortable on the ball. And the clue that gives you about Amorim is he needs his wide defenders in particular to be very gifted on the ball. And the reason for that is he wants this ball played from back to front very, very quickly. So to be a progressive player from the back, you need to have an eye for a pass. And he invites the press a lot because he wants that press high at the pitch so that frees up space in behind for the striker Gyökeres to use his athleticism to get onto the ball. So very often you'll see these balls played into channels so that the striker can run onto it. In terms of the link-up play between the centre-backs and the deeper lying midfielders, I'll be honest with you, it's not that impressive. It's very quick and efficient, but it's similar to United. There's no real pauser about it. So let's just say that ball has been played into Morita. Very rarely will you see Morita, recycling the ball a lot with his back five, playing back and forth like this, creating lots of triangles in possession to try and control the game. Instead, it's all about trying to get that ball as quick as possible forward. So let's just say he was pressed there. As soon as he's received that pass from Inacio, he's been pressed. What you'll usually see is he'll quickly pass it back to, say, Diamonde. Diamonde is then going to look for a forward pass, but let's just say that's cut off. He might end up going back to the goalkeeper or, say, go to his right centre-back. And then this player will drop off to create a passing option there. If that's cut off and that's cut off, but there's a pass in between the middle there to play Trincao, then they're looking to get that ball forward into these inside forwards as quick as possible. The inside forwards are really, really key in this system. They're going to be constantly hunting to create these passing angles for these centre-backs to find them. So that could be there, or if Diamondi was there, play that pass into Pedro. And these inside forwards have to be really, really techie and mobile. They can't just be your static number 10s just waiting around here. They've got to be part of this midfield unit. These four players together are going to try and progress that ball up the pitch. So in that sense, it's a progression from Ten Hag. It's a real structure in terms of how they're getting that ball out from back to front. So that's definitely a positive. What I will say is that there's a lot of chaos involved because let's just say these players get pressed here and you've got a central press here, which is protecting these players. Then there's very little pauses shown. These players have to very quickly almost wriggle their way out of pressure and try and get that ball played forward. Likewise, if it was into Trincao, he'll probably have to dribble inside, look to quickly link up with Gyökeres with the ball. So it's very, very fast-paced stuff. You don't really see any calmness in the way that Sporting Lisbon retain possession, particularly in their own half. So we've looked at Sporting's build-up, but let's just say they've tried to build that ball up from back to front very quickly, but the opposition have clocked on. They've dropped back in numbers. Now they're facing a rest defense or two banks of four. How do Sporting go about breaking that down? What is their attacking structure? So the key thing to look out for and to remember is that Sporting Lisbon's strategy is very geared towards the centre forward. It's all about servicing the centre forward. Very different to, say, Ten Hag's Manchester United, where the wing forwards were encouraged almost to be selfish. Højlund at times was starving of service. You will not see that issue under Amorim. His whole system is geared towards feeding the centre forward. So someone like Gyökeres is so key because he's that predator in the box and everything is about trying to find him. So in terms of Sporting's wing-back choices and their profiles, they've currently, well, it's not always been the case. They used to have Paro, remember. One of their wing-backs is usually quite two-footed or inverted. And in this season, for example, Katomo is left-footed. So he's generally, his main option is looking to cut onto his left and feed balls into the box like this, inverted type of balls. Let's imagine an Ashley Young, but on the opposite flank, let's just say. But this player is also expected to be quite two-footed, a bit like a Madueke, go down the line, and if he can get himself into this area here, use his weak foot to find balls into Gyökeres or play it into the box for, say, a Pedro to come in for a tap-in. So this wing-back on this side is expected to be a bit of a magician, a bit of a two-footed, unpredictable player. On the opposite side, they've got Nuno Santos. He's a lot more orthodox wing-back. He's left-footed. All he's expected to do is basically just go down the line. If he can, first-time ball, using his left foot, get it into the box. At times, he will find himself squared up one-on-one, but generally, he's not going to beat his man that often to get that ball in. He's looking to sort of combine with these type of players, get fed through, and then look to put the ball in. So let's just have a look at these players in action and see whether what I'm saying is true. And that will help build that image in your mind as to what type of United players would be the right type of wing-back profiles for Amorim. So we're going to start off by looking at Katomo. And he's that sort of left-footed player that I was talking about. He's looking to get back onto his left foot, as we can see, put that ball across the box. And he's got to be a good decision maker in terms of his crosses into the box. And there's certain regions that they're looking to target to try and feed that centre forward. Once again, he's got the ball out here on the right wing. As you can see, he's quite agile, quite nimble, good quality ball. So the delivery quality has to be quite high if you're going to be playing under Amorim. Once again here, edge of the box, but he's on the right side. Gets it back onto his left. But also expect to be a bit of a goal threat there as well. So as you can see, it's an inverted wing back. It's not your traditional Cafu down the line. This is a player who's mostly going to be left-footed cutting in, potentially even like an Amad Diallo type of player playing on the right wing. But what I would say is that to take it to the next level, you need that player to be quite two-footed, to be unpredictable. Now let's have a quick look at the left wing back and see the difference. So as we can see here, just very quickly, you can see that sort of 3-4-2-1 structure. You can see that the two men are behind the centre forward and the two wing backs are flying forward as a 5. Nuno Santos gets the ball, looks to play that ball in as quick as possible with his left foot. Same thing again. He's receiving the ball down the left. Very left-footed player. Now, just very quickly on that structure, again, you've got the two men behind the centre forward. You've got the two wing backs, and now you can see that the two centre mids are also supporting that attack. The backboard in there. He can beat a man just about, puts that ball in, and he's looking to feed these central areas. And those players are expected to combine in those central regions. Once again, picks the ball out on the left, tries to beat a man, and put a ball across the box. So that was a useful overview on what his tactics were at Sporting Lisbon. We're now going to try and implement those tactics using the Manchester United squad, try and figure out what his starting 11 might be and what strengths and weaknesses and which players suit playing under Amorim. So in terms of his predicted lineup for when he first takes the role, now obviously I think Yoro's injured, but in an ideal world, I think Yoro would be his main central centre-back. Reason why I say that is he's quite similar in profile to a Diomande. He's quick, he's agile on the ball, he can cover these wide areas. I think that's the sort of player he'd want. Lisandro Martinez is probably the closest player he's got to Inacio. comfortable on the ball, can pass into the channels. I think one of his wide centre backs could be a Matsarawi, someone who really can't be used in a wing back position, but I think in a defensive position, he's quite cultured on the ball. He's positionally quite aware. Him into the lineup, I think this will probably be the best way of trying to integrate him into the lineup. In terms of the wing backs, this is where things get quite tricky. You know, people have mentioned whether Rashford can play as a wing back. I don't think Rashford's got that defensive discipline to get himself back here to form part of the back five. I also don't think that he would thrive basically in these type of roles in a back five system. He's just got to service the front man. I don't think his ego would be able to tolerate that. So for me, I don't think Rashford is a viable selection in the wing back areas of the pitch. At the moment, I've gone for Garnacho as a left wing back because I think one of the wing backs has to be relatively inverted. So I think he would probably go with Garnacho as his inverted left wing back, someone who can get back and forth and cut in and also potentially go down the line. And I think someone like Dalot might be his sort of overlapping natural foot wing back. Now, in my opinion, I don't think Dalot's strength is overlapping in a straight line. So what you could see is Garnacho out on the right instead. And let's just say Dalot on the left. That is also a potential possibility. But I don't think Dalot, again, is two-footed. Well, he is relatively two-footed, but I don't think he's got that magic to make this work. I personally think, you know, you've either got to go Amad Diallo and Garnacho at wing back, or they've got to bring someone new in. One also left field option could be a Henry Amas type of player on the left wing. But again, that would be two natural footed players on each wing. And we've seen that he tends to favor an inverted player on the wing. So different options can be used. But I think if I had to predict, I'd probably go with he starts with Dalot down that side and Garnacho on this side. In terms of the midfield options, I think Ugarte is tailor-made for his system. He knows Ugarte from before, so I'd probably want to use him. I don't think Eriksen or Casemiro have the legs to play in midfield in an Amorim type system. Inside forwards, I think potentially you could see Rashford as one of the inside forwards. That could happen. But very, very important in an Amorim system, these inside forwards have to be incredibly mobile. Also, know the balance between risk and reward in terms of on the ball. And they need to be selfless in terms of their work rate. So again, I think that cancels out Rashford potentially in the long term because I don't think he's going to have that, you know, that ability to retain the ball and be part of the build-up player on a regular basis, which you need to be in the inside forward positions. In terms of the centre forwards, Xerxes is as far as you can get away from what Gyökeres is, whereas Højlund is quite similar to Gyökeres. But the good thing is he'll be coached to run the channels. He'll get the service. It's up to him then whether he can respond to Amorim's demands. But he won't have any excuses under Amorim because Amorim's coaching of Gyökeres and the way he's platformed Sporting Lisbon for Gyökeres is elite. It's top notch. You can't want any more from a centre forward's perspective. So he's got no excuses if he doesn't thrive under Ruben Amorim. So that's a brief overview of the United 11 and how it could look like. But let's just break it down into how would United press under Amorim based on what we've seen from his time at Sporting Lisbon, and which players would thrive because of it and which players could potentially struggle with this new form of press that Amorim will bring to the table. Now, we know that Amorim likes to press in a pentagon. So these players are going to have tremendous work rate to be part of Amorim's setup. You cannot be lazy and get away with playing in an Amorim setup. He expects this 5 contingent to work extremely, extremely hard. So for me, can you imagine Rashford doing the amount of numbers of pressing that he expects from these inside forwards? I can't see that happening at all. I think eventually he would break down or he would just lose interest in doing that. So I just don't see him as a viable option. I think Xerxes is too cumbersome in terms of how he moves around the pitch. His numbers in terms of pressing at his previous club, Bologna, they were decent. So he could potentially play as the spearhead, but as the inside forward, there's a lot of running to do because you've got to also work hard in rest defense as well. So for me, from a spearhead point of view, I think Xerxes could potentially work. But in terms of playing in the deeper roles from a pressing perspective, I think he could potentially struggle. Now, let's just say you've got Højlund pressing. I think he should have the work rate to be able to handle it. Fernandez is quite a hardworking player as well. Now, Mainu and Ugarte. Now, why I think this is so interesting in terms of an Ugarte perspective is that we know that Ugarte really struggles defending this area of the pitch. He's not good at being a holding mid. He's not a positional CDM. But what he is good at is hunting for the ball. So if we've got this system where this 5 are now pressing as a unit. So let's just say the ball was on this side of the pitch. Let's just get the ball. And these 5 are pressing together as a unit. That's Ugate's strength. He doesn't want to protect here. He just wants to hunt for the ball. So Amorim will basically understand what he's about. And obviously, Dalot going in, joining in the press, and then the back 3 can form there. And what you would need, though, is discipline from the opposite wing backs, so say Garnacho, to come back and form a back 4, which is demanding a lot of a winger. It's not their natural mindset, but Garnacho is someone who works hard, and Amorim's going to basically demand that anyway. So that's how it would potentially look like in the press. And I think you'll see a better version of Ugarte, who's just going in to hunt for the ball. He's not going to be protecting this area of the pitch. So from that perspective, there's a positive. However, when you've got players who do get into these pockets of space, there is going to be that issue of defending that number 10 region of the pitch. So there's going to have to be a lot of, intelligent defending from this back 4. It might even be like, for example, Martinez goes into there and that back 4 needs to be staggered. Doing it in the Portuguese league is one thing. How is it going to work in the Premier League? So that's something that which, Amorim needs to watch out for. But in terms of, in theory, is it better for Ugarte? The answer is yes. The other thing worth noting is that someone like Casemiro would really, really struggle in an Amorim setup. He's not someone that you could rely upon to really press high up the pitch. He's not going to have that legs to be part of that 5. You can't expect Casemiro to be pressing as a unit, part of this 5. It's just not going to work. So for me, Casemiro's days are absolutely numbered under Amorim. So we've taken a look at Manchester United's pressing structure, but what about their rest defense structure? Will that team be strong enough to withstand the physical pressures of the Premier League with that rest defense? Let's take a look. So whilst Amorim's approach to United's press will definitely yield an improvement, in my opinion, and you'll see an improvement in players such as Ugarte, for example, I think in terms of the rest defense, there's a lot to be concerned about. So let's just take a look at this. Let's just say the opposition have now got themselves into the final third. Now, I think one of the issues that United have is that when this forms into a back 5, let's just say you've got Diallo coming back, that midfield, forming a 4-man unit in this area of the pitch. I don't think Ugarte or Mainu are that good at defending the number 10 region of the pitch. I don't think that they're very good at defending this area. They're not the most positionally aware. So I can see them making errors in this area of the pitch. The other aspect that you've got is this, let's just say Garnacho and Martinez on this side of the pitch, for example. You've still got that issue of when the ball goes into that area of the pitch, are these two players aerially strong enough to cope with the Premier League? I think if it was on the opposite side, let's just say, and you've got Matsurawi and Dalot, less of a problem. Both of those players are pretty good in the air. So the way you choose your wing backs and who you pair them next to in terms of the wide centre backs is going to be crucial, I think, for Manchester United. And like I said, the issue of Ugarte Mainu, I don't think that can be fixed unless you've got a certain type of profile in the midfield regions. But that's something to watch out for, I think, in terms of rest defense. So that's United from a defensive point of view. Let's have a look at their attacking structure, but starting off with the build-up first. So in terms of the build-up, I think in terms of their centre-back choices and the options that are available to Manchester United, I think it's a positive. I think in players like Martinez, Yoro, if Matsurawi becomes part of the the defensive options, you've got Luke Shaw. I think they've got a lot of players who are very comfortable at playing that ball in between each other, but also finding areas in the channel, linking up with the midfielders. I've got no real worry from United in terms of a build-up perspective based on the centre-backs. In terms of the midfield region, obviously Ugarte is well trained within Amorim's system of play. So he knows that he needs to be efficient, doesn't really need to turn on the ball and have that pauser. That ball's going to go from back to front very quickly. So he's going to know what he's doing. The only issue is obviously there's not going to be that natural 6 if the game's going against him to really take control of this area of the pitch. Mainu, though, does have that pauser more so than any of the midfielders that Amorim managed at Sporting Lisbon. So I guess, again, that's a bit of an upgrade. But what I would say is that those fans wanting a lot of control in this area of the pitch, you're not really going to get that with Amorim as manager. And I don't really think that at the moment we have a profile in there that really can make that happen. My bigger concern is these players, Bruno Fernandes, Diallo. Diallo less so, because I think he does have the pause and the ability to basically, let's just say this player puts the press on him and we're having to build up play. I think Diallo has that ability. Let's just say that ball, he's received it in there. I think he can wriggle away into these areas and then link up back or potentially play in a Højlund and get United on their way. I actually think he's made for it. My bigger issue is Bruno Fernandes. I think he's someone whose dribbling isn't really that elite. I don't think he's that good at wriggling past people. He also has this tendency to play the Hollywood ball a lot. So I don't think Bruno Fernandes is the ideal long-term profile to play in this position. I think he'll do a job, but I don't think he's elite end in that respect. Now, let's assume that United now find themselves in the opposition third. How will Amorim's Manchester United look like? What strengths will they bring to the table? What weaknesses? So the key starting point when you're looking at the United attack is Højlund, because like I mentioned in the sporting section of this video, Gyökeres is the guy that's getting all the service. Everything is very focused on the centre forward delivering. If Højlund can't deliver, then the whole goal scoring, structure of this team breaks down. Now, the thing with Højlund is he's not very good in the air. He's weak in the air. So if the whole game is geared towards getting crosses into him, let's just say from Dalot or these players from the half spaces, Garnacho inverting, or even Garnacho going down the line and getting crosses in, Højlund's got to deliver. He's got to improve his heading, and that's not guaranteed. So that's something to be concerned about from a Højlund perspective, because he's really going to have to up his level, because a lot of this service is potentially going to be in the air against a rest defense. So that's something to watch out for. In terms of the inside forwards, I've got no doubts that someone like Bruno Fernandes can have a bit of a go for it. I know his numbers have struggled in recent years, but in this system, he'll have a certain region of the pitch which he needs to operate with. It'll all be very structured, so he'll know what he needs to do. I think he can thrive from an attacking perspective. Likewise with Amad Diallo, if he was to find himself in this region of the pitch, or even Rashford, whatever player that they choose, these inside forwards will know what they need to do. So I think United will be fine from that perspective. In terms of just going back to the wing backs, I think Garnacho, there's going to be a lot of pressure on him, I think, in this system to create something out of nothing. And I think with Garnacho, he does have that aggression and he has shown that ability to create something out of nothing. But my issue is that there'll be even more attention on him in this type of wingback system, because let's just say the other wingback happens to be a Dalot, nothing's going to really come from Dalot. So everything's going to come from Garnacho. So let's just say you're the opposition and you just put loads of men on this side of the pitch. And we saw with West Ham in the second half in their recent game that once they started to put more bodies down Garnacho's side of the pitch, United really, they just became stagnant. They became stifled. So that's why it's important that United do eventually bring in someone new for that right side of the pitch. Or let's just say Amad Diallo plays on that side of the pitch. They get someone new for this side of the pitch. I personally would lean towards using Diallo and Garnacho as the wingbacks, purely because I think that will increase United's unpredictability. So I wouldn't be surprised if, let's just say it's the final 20 minutes of a game, they haven't broken the team down, that you start seeing Rashford and Bruno Fernandes in these inside forward roles and Garnacho and Diallo as your wide wingbacks. Finally, before we go, just a quick look at potential future signings that would really suit an Amorim style of football. What could the Manchester United team look like in a couple of seasons? Just starting from the back, I think someone like Luke Keeba, that type of player, fast centre-back who is comfortable in wider areas, defending wide channel areas, and is relatively decent on the ball. I think that's the type of wide defender profile that United will be looking for. I think someone like Frimpong, who's got that experience of playing in a back five system, can form the back five, but also can go one-on-one and create chances in these areas. I think Frimpong is absolutely the type of wing-back profile that United should look for. In terms of having attacking midfielders who are nimble, mobile, can press, receive the ball back to goal, and wriggle out of pressure and get that team from back to front quite quickly. I think players like Eze, Florian Wirtz, that's the type of profile that United need, even like a Musiala style player. I'm not saying United can sign these type of players, but what I'm saying is in terms of profile, in terms of style, if you're looking to win the Champions League with this system of football, you're going to need very top end cam style players who can play in these inside forward areas. Jude Bellingham is another example. So I think if United really want to hit the heights, that's the type of profile player they're going to need. In terms of the centre forward, at the moment, I've got Højlund there, but I think if Højlund doesn't deliver, then you're probably looking at someone like Gyökeres coming in who already understands Amorim's demands, and that style of striker might be a good option for Manchester United. In conclusion, I think Amorim's Manchester United will be more dynamic. I think they'll have to press as a unit. I think it'll definitely be more structured. I think off the ball in terms of rest defense, I think, again, it'll be more structured, but I think there's still gaping holes in terms of the personnel aspect, in terms of rest defense. In possession, I'm slightly worried about the build-up play. I don't think United currently have the attacking midfielders to make it work. But in the long term, there will be more structure to it. But I don't think United will be as possession comfortable, let's just say, as your Arsenals or your Man Cities. It's still going to be relatively chaotic. I think there's a lot of pressure put on the centre forward in terms of delivering goals, which is a good thing because I think there'll definitely be better coaching of the centre forward, better service to the centre forward, but there'll be a lot of pressure on that centre forward to deliver. I think overall, I think you're definitely going to expect a more competitive Manchester United in terms of, they're not going to be finishing 14th under Amorim. I think they'll definitely go up the table. Whether this is a system of play which could win the title, definitely not with this current squad of players. I don't think there's enough players there that are fully suited to Amorim's style of play. Whether his tactical framework in general is capable of winning the major trophies in Europe, again, I have question marks. But you would need some big boy players, particularly in the inside forward positions, the number 9 position. I think the wing backs, and even your centre backs, it's a very demanding system of play. Overall, I'd say it's definitely a step forward for Manchester United. But in the long term, he fails. I don't think his style of play is that easy to replicate. I don't think it's a Cruyffian play style, for example, where you see with Barcelona, where they leave something behind. And that style of play, a new manager can easily come in as long as they've got the same sort of possession-based principles. I think this is quite a bespoke system, which concerns me a little bit. Overall, definitely glad that Ten Hag's gone. Definitely looking forward to seeing a bit of structure with the team. But I'm a bit disappointed in the fact that the team will still remain relatively chaotic in the way that it plays football from back to front. But I guess in terms of the tempo, it'll be pretty high. Anyway, guys, hope you enjoyed the video. Please like, share, and subscribe, and see you guys again next time. Bye.